to Island Minds, the mental health podcast. Please note, these episodes deal with topics that some listeners may find distressing. For suggested contacts, please see the show notes on our Facebook page after this episode.
Please note, this episode deals with the following topics: anxiety, OCD, body dysmorphia, and autism.
Hello!
It's a strong start. So, hi.
Hello!
Hey there.
Howdy!
Oh, hoi hoi.
This is so our strength.
It really is.
Openings and closures are our forte.
Mm-hmm.
As you can tell, we are very comfortable in this.
Comfortable. Not out of practice at all.
Yes, it is amazing to be recording though. We obviously have taken a bit of a break, which we will explain in un minuto. Talking of minuto, just very quickly, an apology to both you and our listeners. Obviously, to our regular listeners, in April of last year, I had a little girl, and something that she absolutely loves is Winnie the Pooh. So I probably visit the 100-acre wood about 5 times a day. And Tigger has this really darling thing where he mispronounces words, or he sort of like does half a word and then makes the other half up, or he just uses like the wrong word for the wrong sentence, which I relate to very closely. So I have started doing that. So I apologise profusely, because that's going to happen quite a lot.
That's all right. My brain often I don't know what happens in there, but by the time whatever I was thinking comes out through my mouth, it's well, as I've just evidenced, not very articulate.
It's amazing that we decided to run a podcast.
Yes, amazing. Play to your strength.
So yes, we have taken a hiatus. We started series 2, which started off so strong and so brilliant and amazing. And I think one of the episodes got like 97 listens within a really short amount of time. That was, for us, was amazing. I'm sure there are podcasts out there like 97 listens. I do that in a day. But so when we started this podcast, obviously me and Tia were very honest that we would look after ourselves during this process. And obviously talking about mental health when you're not particularly well yourself can be quite difficult. So there will be times, and are times and have been times, when we will take breaks. And during those times, you can go back and re-listen to all of our amazing episodes from Series 1 and Series 2. But it does happen, and it will happen again. Like, there will be breaks. Life can become very overwhelming for a number of reasons. And at those times, we tell you, our listeners, that it's absolutely okay to put yourselves first and to practice self-care. And it makes absolutely no sense if myself and Tia don't do the same, because that's poor practice on our part. So yeah, that is kind of why there's been a break. 2022 was quite a big year. There's lots of things happened. A lot of things happened. I know for me,
created another human.
Yeah, I know sort of from my side of it, I was so determined to be the same person I was before I had Mallory, that I plunged myself back into gigging regularly. I plunged myself back into selling Body Shop and doing this and that and this, and I was like, yeah, I can still do it all, amazing. And then I got to a point in October, I was like, oh my god, I have always filled up my time thinking that it made me happy and it kept me going, but actually I was filling up my time to stop thinking about, oh, I'm a failure, I haven't succeeded in life. It was all of those things. So in October, I just kind of was like, stop, Hannah, just stop. And it's been amazing, not doing gigs so often and actually having days off that are days off with Mallory and family, and then being able to focus more on work when I'm at work and not 101 other things. So it's a shame I allowed it to get to a point where I was overwhelmed to the point where my anxiety has creeped back, especially my travel anxiety. But at least the silver lining is I'm now working out exactly what I do enjoy doing, what brings positivity to my life, what brings toxicity into my life, and then choosing what to continue pursuing and what not. So I'm still in that phase of working it all out, but it's a good feeling to be there, and it's been quite interesting seeing what has brought negativity. I mean, performing has always been something that lifted me up, but I felt very recently it's been something that's actually taken me down quite a dark path, like excessive drinking, worrying about my looks, filtering every photo beyond, recognition, things like that, just things that are, feel like I've joined some sort of like personal cult all about hating on myself. So now I'm trying to step away from that and reevaluate. So 2022 was, good and bad, but in a productive way for me. How was your year?
I always find New Year really overwhelming and quite stressful, because I think it's quite a weird thing to sort of review a year, and it is insane how much can happen in that time. But I think, like you just said, there's good and bad. That's life. So it's really difficult. I went on 3 holidays last year. Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. But yeah, and they were all amazing. And you'd think, just based on that I'd be like, what a great year. But actually, towards the end of the year, and probably peaking in October, because we're best friends and we just apparently want to share everything. My mental health was at an all-time low. And again, it's interesting you said you allowed it to get to that point. I think I say the same, but kind of a negative connotation to that, isn't it? Like it was our fault. It's so hard to see when you're in the middle of it what's happening. And I realize, in work I have clients that I like help, try and do that, to see those early warning signs, and I should in theory be able to see them for myself, but it's not always that easy, and it's it can creep in so slowly, and then before you know it, it's you feel a bit like you're drowning and you don't know how to or where to start, really, to unpick it all and what's best. It's been good and bad, the year, but we were both just in such a bad place. I just think it would have, we did try to, well, I say we tried to record, we actually, I'm putting air quotes here, recorded an episode, and neither of us were feeling good, and I think we forced ourselves through it, and it was okay. I think parts of it were strong, but I realised at the end of it that I hadn't pressed record, so that was fun. And obviously I reacted really casually and didn't fret about it at all. No spiraling was involved, but I was very upset, but it happened. And Hannah was obviously lovely about it, and I think it just showed us that we were like, oh, I think we're actually in a place to be doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why we're trying to force it.
Like, I'm still in the process of working it all out. So I feel like I don't have, other than to say I'm working things out, seeing what does bring me joy, what doesn't, making more time for important things. I'm still in that process, so I haven't come to a lot of conclusions yet. I did, for Christmas, I got given a book written by, so one of the podcasts I listen to, My Favourite Murder. So it's written by Karen Kilgariff and Georgia Hardstark, and I thought it would be a true crime book because it's a true crime podcast. Clearly I don't listen to them properly when I'm listening to them. It actually turned out to be the self-help book I've always needed. So it, like, some of the this is a book I have dog marked pages, I have put post-it notes in, like the opening chapter is, I'm not going to say the first word because this is a friendly podcast, but basically, you know, FUCK, politeness. And it's not about not being polite. It's about not putting yourself in situations because you feel like you have to be polite. Like, and and there's other chapters. One of the chapters is call your dad, you're in a cult. And it's not like, we're not talking like Jonestown cults. We're talking about feeling like the cult of alcohol, feeling like you need alcohol to function, or the cult of perfection, feeling like you need to be perfect all the time. And there were so many things that just resonated with me in this book, and I couldn't believe it. As I was reading it, I couldn't put it down. I didn't want it to come to an end, but equally I wanted to get to the end because I felt like it was really allowing me to sort of see through the fog. But it was so accidental because I had no idea that it was going to be like that. I should have known because their podcast, they are very open about that sort of thing. And they have this thing where they say, like, don't get lost in the forest, because number one, in true crime, when you end up in the forest, a lot of the time you do end up not alive, but it's more metaphorical in terms of don't get lost in sort of the forest, like around you, like the everyday things. So it's absolutely amazing. I mean, if you're into true crime, check it out, but like if you're looking for an alternative self-help book, it's just been incredible for me.
It's amazing.
So yeah, I'm still in that working it all out phase. No real conclusions as of yet, only that I am still just giving myself like time off from things that aren't work or family, and allowing more time for family. So yeah, I don't have much more to say on that because it is still a process, and I guess as episodes go on, I'll update that process. My mental health isn't in a great place in terms of anxiety at the moment. It's mainly health anxiety, which has all been triggered from obviously having a C-section, not wanting a C-section, and all of the sort of worries that come with that. I end up scanning my body, which I know you're not supposed to do, but you know, it's silly things like getting like a spot somewhere and being like, it's death, when it's not, it's a spot. Yeah, it's not great, but also because I've got this renewed sense of figuring stuff out, I'm approaching it in quite a positive, proactive way.
Yeah.
Which is a really nice thing to be able to do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that's good.
Mm.
Like you, I've been working a lot on what I can do to get myself well, and having a lot of time to reflect. One of the things I reflected on with my mental health was that unfortunately I took on too many mental health related things at the same time. So we started this podcast just before I got my job, obviously working in mental health, and then doing the podcast, and then trying to look after my own mental health in a role that has had a huge impact on that, not only in terms of the work I do with clients, but also the amount of training involved that then leads to self-reflection and checking in with myself. And it's just been an overload. So when I was feeling really unwell, I felt like something else was going on, in terms of I had something else that was undiagnosed, and there were a couple of things that I thought it could be, and you know, was quite set on that, but it was really sort of hard to identify, and the way I was feeling wasn't necessarily an accurate reflection. Because, for example, I wondered if I had body dysmorphia, and that's something I spoke to you about, Hannah, and it was just, that's something I now feel I don't have, but it's that my self-esteem had reached such a low point that I thought there was something really wrong in that respect. But actually, over the last few months, I've realised that I'm autistic. And I've spoken to you about it, but basically I've had training through work, and had a lot of conversations at work, and then it's really been like a really slow realization building for months. And then it was just it sounds really stupid, but it was looking at some memes online. I've got an autistic friend who shares a lot of memes, and I always liked all of them and I found it funny. And then I was having more and more of these conversations with my colleagues, and a lot of my team are autistic, and I kept sort of saying, could I be, do you think? And they, you know, my supervisor's autistic, and she was sort of saying, well, yeah, maybe, you know, because I wasn't sort of there with the realization yet. And then yeah, I was just seeing all of these memes, and I went on this one page. It's just my new favorite page in the world. It's called Life in Autism World on Instagram, probably on Facebook too. But I spent hours on there, and every single post on there was something I related to, and they were things that I just thought were things that everyone felt. There's one that really got me that was like, I simply do not vibe with this fork. And I realised that when I go to my mum's house, like my mum has like multiple sets of cutlery in her house, and I had been around there like not long before and been like, Mum, can you find that one teaspoon with the green handle, because I want that one. Like, out of all of the spoons, I just need to have that one. That one feels good. And I started to look back at how I guess just my life and myself, and it was honestly like taking the red pill in the Matrix, and this huge light bulb moment, and my whole life suddenly makes sense. And I'd kept saying to my supervisor, I was like, I just feel like I'm pretending to be a person rather than being a person. I feel like I'm pretending to live a life. And it was really hard to explain, but that's really how it felt, and sometimes does still feel. But honestly, so many things make sense. I have loads of sensory issues. I've just thought it's just how I was. I've felt odd and different and like an outsider my entire life. I've never felt like I fit in, no matter how hard I try. Like, I'm always trying to fit into this mold, and it just doesn't work. And never felt like the right sort of girl. And yeah, like the sensory things, I just assumed everyone gets really stressed out if the seam of their sock is slightly off the straight of my toes. Like, if I'm out walking, I'll have to take off my shoe and deal with that. I can't stand it. And really funny with lights and sounds, and I can hear electricity, which is apparently quite common. And there's just so many things, and it's incredible, because I'm sorry I'm talking so much.
No, don't apologize. I don't know if you know this or not, but like everything you've just said was completely non-rambly and perfectly articulate.
Okay.
Like you almost had planned out to the point everything you were going to say.
Oh, thank you. It's just, that's probably come from, I've had this conversation with a few people now, and it's quite funny. One of the traits of autism is hyperfixating on things, and that's something I've always done, and like I'm really obsessive with films and TV for me. So like I have to learn everything about my latest obsession, and then I'll like let it consume me, and then I'll move on to the next thing. And I just thought that was quite standard. And like if I move from like my favorite song at any one time, and I have to listen to it like 10 times in a row, like every day for a few weeks, and until I absorb it. And yeah, it's I've been reading all these things, and apparently people who sort of realize that they're autistic then sort of hyperfixate on autism and learning everything about it, and suddenly realizing all this stuff. So I have been talking about it a lot, but I'm just so excited, because often when it does go undiagnosed, and it does go undiagnosed in girls far more frequently, and there's a lot of cases of adult females being diagnosed quite late, like in their 30s and their 40s. But when it does go undiagnosed, it manifests in anxiety and depression. And I still have anxiety at the moment, but it has drastically reduced since I've realised this, because it's been the most freeing thing in the world, because I'm like, oh, I can't fit into that mold. I physically can't, no matter how hard I try. Like, I can't do that, so I don't need to try. And I saw a video of, it was a man who's diagnosed at 45, and he said most of his mental health problems had come from trying to force his neurodivergent brain to be neurotypical. And it's just like repressing your identity and yourself, and you invalidate all of your experiences. And all my life I'm like, oh, I've just been oversensitive and melodramatic, or I feel like I'm overreacting if there's a change of plan and I freak out about it, when actually it's just that I need time to process and reconfigure to a new plan, and that's just part of my processing issues. And one of the things I've realised is that a lot of my panic attacks are related to sensory issues, not necessarily anxiety, and that's can be called overwhelm in terms of too many sounds, maybe the lighting, but normally it's just feeling like everything's pressing in on me, and that I'm being watched, even if like I'm not. It's like a hyper awareness of everything, and I found that really interesting, and again, quite freeing. And and another part of it that's been where the anxiety can come from is masking. And again, that can be why it can go so undiagnosed, because if it's missed when you're a child and then you learn to mask, you get quite good at that. Even though I never felt like I was like other people and that I fit in, people would would say that they wouldn't know anything was wrong because I was getting really good at that behavior. But when I got home, I'd be so drained from that, it would just wipe me out. And apparently quoting films a lot and being like learning from film is quite common, and that I've always described my anxiety as being like, oh, I just expect everything to be like a film and be like a scene from a film. So that's always what I'm trying to, or always what I have been trying to achieve, to feel like everyone else, I guess. But I just as a side note, I am now on a waiting list for an official diagnosis for autism, which I'm really hope I get, but it is up to 2 years, the waiting list, which is why I'm being very open about it now, because I'm 100% sure I don't want to wait 2 years and like hide that part of myself any longer. And it's quite common for people to self-diagnose, and that's accepted, because there's lots of barriers to people getting diagnosed for various reasons. So I was just going to say, in terms of, I wanted to clarify that part of why I thought I might have body dysmorphia last year was because I was feeling uncomfortable in my own skin and hating the feel of my own body and how clothes feel on me. And it turns out that's to do with my sensory issues with autism, and the way certain fabrics feel, and feeling out of place. And people often describe it as feeling like an alien in a human suit. So yeah, that's what I just wanted to clarify, that because I know I didn't want people to think I was just like, oh, not feeling great about myself, I must have body dysmorphia, like it was trivializing it. There was a lot that seemed to suggest to me that was
and I remember you talking to me about it at great lengths as well. A lot of thought had gone into it. It wasn't just a case of you looked in the mirror one day and decided that's what I got.
And it's really hard during that time, because particularly if you have anxiety and health anxiety, people who are like, oh, well, you will self-diagnose, and it's like, yeah, but sometimes there is actually something going on, and sometimes you've got to go through a few steps to get there. And the amount of people I know that have been misdiagnosed by professionals, and then it's turned out to be something else later. So it happens. It's a lot of these things have crossover. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that point. I also wanted to talk about the reactions I've had to some of the reactions I've had telling people I'm autistic. I've had people say, "No, you're not," which is
Oh,
nice.
so helpful.
And I think, part of that is that, like, as I said, I've been so good at masking, or
Yeah.
they've only seen a snippet, and they don't know how I feel.
Yeah.
And on the other side, I've had like my colleagues and bosses who are autistic. They were like, "Yes," like, it's about time you figured it out. Like, they've known from the beginning. And I had a colleague the other day, she's autistic, and I was really excited to tell her, because she's spoken about her experiences a lot, and I was like, "Oh, I've worked out I'm autistic," and she's like, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were already diagnosed. I thought that was a thing." Like, no. But yeah, it's like, yeah, every autistic person I've spoken to is like, "Yes, of course you are."
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And I think the people that are saying, "No, you don't," it goes back to what we harbour on about quite rightly in most of our episodes about lack of understanding, and just that little lack of sort of compassion and willingness to listen.
Yeah. And a lot of it's stigma and preconceived ideas. And a common response I've had, and I know this is very common for autistic people, is people say, "Yeah, everyone's a little bit autistic, aren't they?"
I knew you were going to say that. I thought you were going to say, like, everyone's on the spectrum. I knew it was going to be
that's
that.
a variation. So it's either a little bit autistic or everyone's a little bit on the spectrum or on the spectrum. And I want to make it clear that obviously this is all still very new for me, and I'm not an expert, but from all the research I've done, it seems to be that this is a common thing. And there's some great resources I found that, because that's not the case, let me just say that that's not true. And there's a lot of resources I looked at that explain it in detail that I will include in our information part of this episode, because they're really great to check out. And there's a video, and this guy says it's like when people say, "Oh, I'm really hygienic, so I'm a little bit OCD," and like, which as you've spoken about, have experienced your whole life, or, "Oh, I'm feeling a bit down, I must be depressed." He used an example. He was like, "Oh, I'm feeling bloated and have swollen ankles, so I'm a little bit pregnant." Thought you'd appreciate that one.
I do appreciate that.
He said it's like saying that because, and I actually, the autism training we had at work through like a professional service said it's not the case. People are either autistic or they're not. Now, the spectrum is often misinterpreted, or there's a lot of misinformation around it, and people think it's you're a little bit or you're very autistic, or severely autistic is a phrase that gets used a lot, and that's not what the spectrum is. It's you're either autistic or you're not, or you're neurodivergent or you're not. And then the spectrum is the different traits people will experience, and then like different autistic traits, so that I have autistic friends that experience traits I don't, and vice versa. And then again, as we know, no two people are the same. It's not just that people experience different traits, it's that the level they then experience those traits will vary. And it doesn't just vary from person to person, it also varies from day to day, from situation to situation, and it can depend on stress levels and specific situations. So it's not a case of being a little bit autistic or severely autistic and it being a linear spectrum like that. It's more a case of which traits apply to you in general and on any given day. So there are autistic people who still use terms like severely autistic, or identify as severely autistic, but a lot of people find that describing it that way, or using phrases like that, or low functioning or high functioning, can be actually very harmful phrases to use. And I think as well, there's an idea that if people are able to cope better with some things, like if they're able to do better in social situations, then they're not as autistic. But actually that's not the case, and what people aren't seeing is the knock-on impact that has on people, like how draining masking can be, etc. But that's why some people have hyper empathy, some people really struggle with empathy, you know, all of those sorts of things. That's a common misconception with autism, actually, that people have no empathy.
That's so interesting, because you do hear everyone is on the spectrum so often. Whenever something like autism is brought up in conversation, someone is going to say it, you know. It's like a bingo thing. Yep, they've said it.
Yeah, it's like on QI.
And I'll be honest, I've just always assumed that is the case, because it is what everyone says. So that is incredibly informative and interesting.
Good. Yeah, and honestly, like, before, you know, I learned about all this stuff, I probably would have thought that too, and probably have at some point, because that's the way it's talked about. And I know people mean well when they say it, but not only is it not true, but again, it does that thing of trivializing your experience. And in the video that I'm going to put the link in, the guy says, and I just thought it was a really great way of explaining it. He said, by saying that, you're making very difficult and real experiences seem like everyday experiences, and it's just not the case. Like, again, it's like with any sort of mental health disorder, it's when it impacts on your life to a negative level. And I just wanted to mention that. And I've not yet found a response when people say it to me, because I've had people very dear to me say it to me, and I know they don't mean anything by it, and it's really hard to sort of, you know, say actually no without feeling like an asshole. But
you should tell them to listen to the podcast.
Well, I think some of them do. Sorry, I'm not targeting anyone here. I just want to put it out there because I think it's important. But I think I said every word under the sun. I'm so sorry.
No, like I said, that was maybe because what you have just described is so very authentic that it comes out so beautifully articulately, because it is authentic and it's coming straight from the heart. It's not a forced thing, is it? It's something that you're talking about passionately, and it's something that is you're telling your authentic story.
I mean, I was going to write notes because I was worried I wouldn't be able to talk, but I just thought, no, you feel pretty strongly about this, give it a go.
Really I think there's something really beautiful as well, that it's this episode that you finally get to sort of give your story, because we've spoken about you having your episode for a long time, and I think there's something kind of lovely that it's this episode, for reasons we will discuss in a memento.
and those reasons are, and I wanted to start with the autism bit because so much of it has been, and it's taken a long time to process. It has been wonderful, it has been very freeing, but I felt like I've got this new identity, or my real identity, or I'm trying to work out what my identity actually is, because I'm like, okay, I've been masking most of my life. How much is me and how much is just who I've wanted to present to the world? So I've really been trying to unpick, what do I do that I enjoy because I enjoy it, not because I feel I should, not because I want to people please and I want people to like me, not because I want to appear smart. So like, I'll want to read certain books so I seem intellectual. I'll watch films that people have recommended so that I can tell them I watched it, like I've pleased them, rather than, like, it can be as simple as that to, you know, my whole personality. But I'm really trying to get in touch with, okay, I'm just doing that because it brings me joy, because I want to. And part of that reflection, very sadly, was that I feel I've been doing the podcast for a while because I feel like I should, rather than because I enjoy it. And it's not that I don't love it, because I have, and I'm so proud of it. But I think taking it on at the same time as the job and finding it hard on my own mental health, I pushed through that because we get such wonderful feedback, and I thought, oh, that's something people should be talking about. I should be part of that, because it's good for other people, but also because it makes me feel good to be doing something important. And actually it's it has been a factor in how I've been feeling and making me ill. And as a result of that, what is it Bilbo says? I'm going now.
Yeah. I've put this off for far too long.
I put this off for far too long. Yes, I am cruelly abandoning Hannah, and this will be my last episode.
Yes. This is Tia's final episode, which I haven't actually processed yet, so that's going to be fun.
Honestly, I was so scared about telling you. I was like,
No!
And you were so ill at the time. I was like, how am I going to tell her? What if this is the only thing keeping it going? Apart from your beautiful child and family, of course.
It is sad, but I'm also so proud of you for sticking to what you need to do. That's wonderful. And I will probably nag you to be a guest speaker on occasion.
Oh, I'd love that. I would. Clearly, I like talking now.
So yeah, for the time being, it will be like a more solo style podcast, other than obviously the guests we bring on each time, which we're not doing this time. This is Tia's time.
This is my time.
So obviously there will be the guest, but for a little while it will be a more solo based adventure. And if someone does come along and it fits, then maybe they'll it will go back to being a co-hosting situation, but it has to be right. It has to be the right fit. We were very lucky in that people seemed to really engage with our conversations. Even when they went off on the most incredibly random tangents, people seem to enjoy that regardless. So there are big changes ahead, and I'm sure all of our listeners are thinking, no, Tia keeps Hannah on track. Oh my God.
It's the other way round.
You don't know the truth. So Isle of Minds will continue, but it will be bereft of its Tia.
Oh, I am sad about it, and I've been like, is this the right decision? But yeah, it's
if it's not the right decision, it's not like you have to reapply for your job or do an interview.
Audition. I'm really glad you're carrying it on, because, and I know you always tell me off when I say this, but it is your baby, and it was your it was your project, and you have put in, I would say, 95% of the work.
I feel like when it first set up, I kind of like unfairly sort of lassoed you, because it's like, oh yeah, I'll help, I'd love to come and talk on it. And then before you even had a chance to like breathe, it was like, co-host Tia Jackson. Like, I feel like there was almost a little bit of like, I manipulated this situation.
No, you didn't. I did. I have really loved it. I genuinely have. And I wish I could continue, but part of who I am, and I've learnt now that this is related to autism, is that I'm hyper empathetic. Yeah, I just already doing it for work. I just struggle to then use my spare time to chat to people about this stuff, even though I think they're amazing for doing it and I think it's really important. It's just not something I have the capacity to do any longer.
Well, I promise, if we end up interviewing Joseph Quinn or Pedro Pascal, you will be the co-host for those particular episodes.
Thank you so much. I won't be able to talk for other reasons.
This is TMI's silent co-host.
My drooling co-host.
My drooling co-host. Obviously, going forward with the podcast, it will be really interesting to see how it evolves or adapts or falls off of, the cliff. So yeah, it will be a very interesting sort of like process to see how it works without your dynamic. And your insanely amazing editing skills. So yeah.
I mean, my editing's normally needed because I've rambled off on complete tangents.
Which you haven't done this time.
Not too much. I've got a couple of bits now that might need to be fitted into other places.
Let me just get cozy.
I always refer to my brain as a pinball machine. I was going to say, I know we said this before, but I wanted to highlight again. Mental health recovery is a journey and it's full of ups and downs. And I say this all the time to people at work because it's really frustrating when your mental health does decline and you feel like you've gone backwards. And I know we've both felt like that.
Yeah.
But it's not the case, because that would be like saying all of the progress you made before that point just doesn't matter. I just don't believe that. I think it's just that it's full of ups and downs and you have to do the downs sometimes, unfortunately, or go through the downs. And it doesn't mean that like all of the stuff before didn't matter or that you've gone backwards. So it's just part of it. And it sounds like we've both, been at a really low point, but then also learned a lot about ourselves and focused on what keeps us well, more so than we were in tune with before. So yeah, sometimes you got to do that dip.
Yeah. It would be lovely if you didn't have to, but
yeah. I mean, you don't have to do it, but it happens. It's life. It's unfortunate, and it's it's part of it. For anyone who feels like they're backwards, you're just on a dip.
Yeah.
In the words of Ronan Keating.
Life is a roller coaster.
Just gotta ride it.
Just gotta ride it.
I could keep rambling on, honestly, but I think we need to.
I have to say, I think of all the episodes we've recorded, and there are so many that I love, this is probably my favourite because it's been so lovely just listening to your. I talk a lot. We all know that. Podcasts can be very me heavy, and I don't mean for them to be. It's just it happens. But it's been so lovely stepping back and just letting you tell your truth, and you've done it so brilliantly. And it's so lovely that this has been a freeing experience for you. This has been like a positive journey. We often attach a lot of negativity to diagnoses, but actually for many people getting a diagnosis means I have something to work with. I can now understand my reaction to this. I can understand that experience, why this happened, why that happened, and going forward, like you said, you no longer have to fit a mold that doesn't fit. So it's been lovely hearing about this in such a positive, proactive way. I can see how uncomfortable you are.
No, I'm tearing up. That's so nice, and it's really, and this is how much of a difference it's made to me that I'm not even cringing. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I feel the most myself I've ever felt, and I just been trying to be so kind to myself. Like, obviously still a lot of work to do. Oh, and I am in more therapy at the moment, I will say, but which is going well, and that's good. But I'm also looking back at so many instances where I've beat myself up about the way I've been in situations, and now I know why I was like that. I'm like, oh, I can forgive myself and let it go, and it's amazing. Yeah.
Just amazing, like you said.
But for the record, that's why you normally talk so much, because you just sound so good when you talk.
Stop.
I can see we need to get a bit further with your conversation.
Don't be turning this round on me. This is tea attack.
You just summed that all up really beautifully, and it was nice, and you're very articulate, and
not always.
This has been one of my favourites. Now I don't want to leave.
Yay!
Oh, what are your cunning plan? No, I think I am happy to come on and guest, and actually I really enjoy editing, so maybe I can help with that if you're ever struggling. But I think it's just, I absorb other people's stuff. It's why I can't watch the news.
Yeah.
And why I have to be really careful with the media I watch and stuff, because I will just absorb it and it overwhelms me.
I do have it's not funny, but like a little day in the life of anxiety story for you. You've just reminded me, talking of being careful. So the podcast I listen to, My Favorite Murder, sometimes they cover like sort of unexplained happenings. It's not always murder. Sometimes it's, you know, things like incredible survival stories or things like that. And anyway, I started listening to one today, and I stupidly didn't open the whole paragraph. So their podcast, basically, they both tell a story. They start with one, and then the other host will tell theirs. And the first story sounded so interesting, and it was about these hitchhikers in Japan that went missing, and they were found because of this massive big SOS that had been created out of logs. Turned out they hadn't created the SOS. So it was like, oh, who did? Who else is out there? Amazing. The second story was about this huge earthquake in Alaska, I think in 1964, which basically changed the whole geography of Alaska and the surrounding areas and created a lot of things, natural disaster things, which, as you know, my OCD is triggered by natural disasters. So I'm just like sweeping away, mucking out manure, and then I'm hit with all of this really triggering material. And at this point, I was like, I've listened to enough of it now. I need to hear it all. I need to get to the conclusion of this. But I was like, I should have read the whole blurb for that, because I did spend a little bit of time after that, like seriously fighting the need to do the rituals that come with, you know, my OCD. So it's not funny, but it was just a day in the life of someone that, you know, has to think about these additional things. So yeah, but I mean, half of me's laughing about it, half of me's like, I'm not sleeping tonight. But yeah, it's my little story.
Horrible when that happens, isn't it? Especially if you're not prepared. You're like, oh no. I've had a few cinema instances and I'm like, oh no.
So funnily enough, the very first time I remember it being a visual thing, we were sat in the cinema and a trailer for, I think it was, the day after tomorrow. I have to whisper it. It was like a trailer for that, and that sent me absolutely spiraling. I don't even remember what film we went to see, because all I can remember is that. And you know how much I love the cinema. But yeah. So to conclude, me and Tia are both on journeys of self-discovery, which is wonderful. Highly recommend. And Tia it's the breaking of the fellowship.
Oh God. Would have gone with you to the end.
I know.
To the very fires of Podbean. Oh God.
You are editing this.
Yes, that's fair.
That can be your farewell gift to me.
Yes, my parting gift to you.
Thank you.
I'm editing this.
Thank you.
But yes, in all seriousness, thank you to everyone for your support, and it's been amazing. And thank you for listening, and please keep listening to Hannah because she's amazing.
Stop.
I shan't. And I'm incredibly proud of her, and will help in any way I can that isn't detrimental to my health. But for now, I must bid you I can't say goodbye, seriously, I can't. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
It's also very hard for both of us to get through any sentence without making a film reference.
It is very hard.
It's nice to lean into that. Literally every shift we had together at the castle, if it was sunny, I don't know if anyone out there's seen Thumbelina. Apparently it's not that well known.
Once there was the sun.
Literally every time it's sunny we started singing that. Oh God.
Goodness. I watched that like 2 days ago, and oh my God, I just love that film. For one specific reason.
Impossible things.
Oh, you can have your Erics, you can have that. It's Cornelius all the way.
Oh, Cornelius. such buoyant hair.
Cheekbones.
Seriously, look them up. Okay, well, what was I going to say? Oh, what did we end up doing with social media and stuff? Did we mention that as part of our? Because I know I put in that annoying friendly
Follow
neighbourhood
us.
podcaster thing that I then ended up hating and immediately removed.
If you enjoy our podcast, please follow us. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as Island Minds, the mental health podcast.
Excellent.
We also do have a blog if people would like to come and chat about their experiences, but not in verbal form. If you feel better writing about your experience, can obviously be anonymous should you wish it to be. Please do let us know. We do have that option available for you as well. And as always, please leave us a review on whichever podcast platform you use. That would be amazing.
Yes, please. Look, guys, I don't want to play the guilt card here, but it's my last episode. A review would be just the best leaving gift you could get me. Yeah, that would be so good, guys. And I don't know where to go from there. It's
that time for saying goodbye, and as our regular listeners will know,
farewell,
saying goodbye. I'd like to stay and taste my first champagne. As our new listeners can also see, this is not where our forte lies. I was trying to find a quote, but unfortunately my phone's just not doing it fast enough.
Were you trying to find the Winnie the Pooh quote?
No, I found that. No, I wasn't.
Oh.
But now I feel bad that I wasn't.
No, it's fine. I thought you might be going for, how lucky am I to have had something so good that it makes saying goodbye this hard.
Okay, well, now you've ruined my
Sorry,
quote.
It's one of my favourite quotes. And that's what I'm saying. I'm leaving the podcast, but how lucky am I to have had something so good that it makes saying goodbye this hard.
And if you do need a little pick-me-up, I really suggest reading Winnie the Pooh because it's full of amazing little feel-good one-liners like that. My favourite one being, I'm short, fat and proud of that. No, the quote I was looking for was, end? No, the journey doesn't end here. But no. It
was a good one.
Yes, I feel like yours was better.
No, because you went for Lord of the Rings. I think they were just as good as each other.
Okay, we'll go with that then. Our listeners will be like, no, Tia's one was better.
Well, too bad, because I'm gone.
I'm gone, baby.
I'm out of here.
I think we'll go out on this quote. Well, here at last, dear friends, on the shores of the sea, come the end of our fellowship of the podcast. Go in peace. I will not say do not weep, for not all tears are evil.
Oh, beautiful.
Okay, right. I am going to press the stop recording button because you have agreed to edit this, and I feel for your own sake, it is time.
Yes.
Yes, it is time.
It is time.
If you have been affected by any of the topics covered in today's podcast, please see our show notes on our Facebook page for our suggested contacts. If you're interested in talking on our podcast, please get in touch through the Facebook page. We'd love to hear from you. Stay safe, you wonderful people.